Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Really appreciate it. It's wonderful to have so many people here. This is, once again, the Landmark Difference Makers interview series. And today I'm very excited to participate in an interview with Mark and Rebecca Ford, known as Two Circles Design. They're distinguished environmental artists based in South Downs National Park in Sussex, which is in the UK, if you're not familiar. And their work utilizes found and grown natural materials, including monumental woven environments for public and private sectors, drawing on ancient willow craft and woodland management traditions. Mark and Rebecca create site-specific works that integrate with the environment. As artists, they are committed to a philosophy of a slower-paced, hands-on approach to art that's evident in their processes, including growing materials and participating in woodland conservation. Internationally recognized, they've represented the UK at various international environmental land events and festivals around the world, and their work celebrates the harmony between traditional craftsmanship and environmental consciousness. And we're really excited to learn about their journey and to talk about their impact on art and the community. Well, let's talk about your actual installations for a moment.
Okay.
I think a lot of people, if you're not familiar with land art, most people associate art with the mediums of painting and sculpture and things that you might see in a museum or a gallery. Land art is something that, if people haven't heard of it, how would you describe it?
Land art is a very general term for artists who work with natural materials all over the world. I would say site-specific, so as close to where you're working as possible, not diminishing the resource, not in any way, and something that's a response to that area where you're working.
So yeah, for example, if you've gone out, it's a really cold day and you come across a frozen puddle, and you may break the ice and use the ice to create like some sort of pattern, or and you're not disrupting too much the natural environment. Or you might go and in the autumn, when there's lots of beech masts, or there's all these fabulously beautiful shaped colored leaves, you may create a mandala or some sort of shape, or even thread them and hang them. So very subtle different changes that you're doing, but it's also very impactful, very delicate, and it's ephemeral. It will be gone in a breath. And so often the documentation of these art is the photograph or the film. And many of the land arts, including Mark's getting really great at it, is actually not just taking photos, but creating short films of the piece as it's being made. And the community of land artists that we're part of, there are filmmakers and rock balancers, people who come and actually go into, I mean, James here is an extraordinary rock balancer. That's when you actually build a balance of rocks up to a certain height, but also different complexities of balance. It's not something that we do particularly, but it's also, that moment when it just collapses and it's gone, and it's just very little impact on the environment.
Yeah, everything has its time. So whether that's like a moment, like a song is, or like a poem is, or whether it's something that will last for a couple of years, as if it's a natural material or from the site, then it's land art, which is similar, but not the same as environmental art. Environmental art can be political in nature. So it could be someone on an iceberg with a blowtorch, or it could be a car covered with soil or something. That would be a found object, but it can still be environmental art. And what we do stuff that's ephemeral, but we also do sculpture in a landscape, which is sort of placing objects in the landscape, a bit like a sculpture park, say. So
a lot of people may question the purpose of art. The art is subjective, and art is used a lot of different ways, but for somebody who is listening to you describe rock balancing or harvesting willow and some of these photos, it could seem, and then it's not permanent.
Mm.
What's your answer to why?
Well, nothing is permanent.
It's a great question, because it's so subjective, and art is different to everyone has a different view of art, and for every single human being on the planet will have a slightly different, well, what is art to them? And for me personally, it's whatever moves me and whatever delights me. And it doesn't have to be in a gallery. It doesn't even have to be like a man or woman has touched it, but it's just, anything that just, I don't know, just there's a,
It's kind of like everything that exists in the tangible world, like a book or whatever, exists as a result of the actions people have taken and not taken throughout history without time. So whether you spend a moment to do something or whether you spend your lifetime creating something, does it really mean anything? Is it, and who says it's art anyway? It's a matter of a declaration, I would say. If you're an artist intentionally doing something, then you're an artist. If you're doing something as accidental, is that still art? That's up for debate.
It's a really subjective. But I was also going to say, when we were preparing for today, Mark was talking about an artist, hadn't he been hollowing out a volcano for like 30 years?
Yeah, James Turrell's still, I think he's nearly finished hollowing out that volcano.
So,
yeah.
And that is like, that's a piece of land art, and that's monumental. It's taken a lifetime, and he's still, I mean, it's just extraordinary. I mean, that may not be art to some people. That may be like the actions of somebody who seems quite mad, actually. But it's incredibly subjective.
Well, let's talk about the mad part for a moment. And by the way, just a reminder to everybody, you can submit any questions you like at this point in the chat. It's open. I know that having met you before, I know that you are people that are pretty intentional about having an impact on the world and making a difference. And obviously, this is a huge part of what you do and what you do for a profession. How does that fulfill on that intention to contribute, make a difference, have an impact?
Well,
okay, you go.
Shall I go first? Well, first of all, one of the things that we absolutely love to do is to go and work with either community groups or schools. And what we like to create is like really big projects where lots of people can take part. And for example, I think about 5-6 years ago, we had the opportunity to work in Chichester Cathedral with the education department to create a project which was commemorating the end of World War I. And we created a piece called the Spire of Peace, which was woven out of willow
with young carers and a women's institute and anybody who wanted to join, and schools,
lots of different schools,
people with special needs.
And one of the things that they were able to do, because this woven piece, so there's a couple of things I want to really highlight. Is one of the things we get the feedback when people sit inside one of our structures, they really experience like a real peace and sense of wonder, which is, we've got a comments book here, and we were just reading through some of the comments, which were just so moving. And when young people were sitting inside the structure, and they were just meditating on what peace meant to them, and then they were writing out a little label and putting it on to the woven piece that we did in the cathedral. When we went in and were reading some of the messages from these young people, it was extraordinarily moving what they were creating and how aware they were, and how they were able to have some kind of a voice, even by taking that very little action. But then people would come and they would go around and read what other people have written. And another similar project, which was
messages inside this structure, it was a 9-meter high spire inside the cathedral, which is pretty tall, right?
Yes.
And we probably had about 4,000 or 5,000 little messages of peace and what people wanted to create for the future and for the world.
Yeah.
It was really inspiring. And schools would come in and they would do talks, and it was very inspiring.
It was
But,
wonderful.
that provokes another question. There's a term, people probably have heard it, with all of the technology that young people grow up with today. There's a book out called Nature Deficit Disorder, and being a parent myself, it's clearly a real phenomenon. And there's something that you're touching on about provoking the imagination of young people with your art. And our connection to the natural world, or connection to the natural environment, is radically different in the 21st century than it was in the 19th. And I'm of the opinion that something's been lost, in our separation from the natural world. But what would you say about how your work addresses that?
I would say it depends where you live in the world. Yeah, we have the technology, but it's whether you're actually connected or engaged with what's outside your door, what's down your street, what's in your local park. You can still be in an urban area and still be connected to nature. And I don't think technology really takes us away. Probably because we come from before the internet, before the internet. But if I could say one of the differences we've made. So we did a workshop at a school, a 2-day workshop in 2007, 2008. And during the pandemic, I had a call from a guy who's now an architect. So he was like an 8-year-old boy at the time, and now he's an architect. And because of his experience in our workshop, he thought actually he could make a difference.
It was great, wasn't it? And I think that, your question, Seamus, is really interesting, because we found when we did a project about 2 or 3 years ago, when we worked with some really high functioning young people who were at like an independent school, which is a paid for school education. So most of these young people were going to be doctors by the end of it, but some of them, like, we worked with the art teacher, and she said these people are really great at art, but they'll most likely go towards medicine or law, because that's the kind of, we'll give them a living. And we took them into the woods and we worked with them coppicing
with axes and bill hooks and saws. They could have lost limbs, but
no, they didn't. And they absolutely loved it. And then I think the following week we're in the woodlands with a group of young people with special needs, like learning disabilities. And we actually found that there was no difference between the two groups when we worked with them. It was like how to use the tools, and how, we talked about how the trees would grow towards the light and all that, these very basic things, like natural things. We actually experienced there was absolutely no difference between the two groups and their engagement. And it really, taking young people or anybody out into the natural world and creating like very small pieces of art, placing leaves, that you actually see people start to just
slow down
and just like feel the wind on their faces. And it sounds very romantic, but it really makes a difference to people, and that they have permission to go and do that. And I think I know we've got 2 or 3 land artists with us here today, and I know that all the land artists that I have met have an absolute commitment to working with communities, and whenever they get a chance to work with anybody to create something, there's a commitment that they experience that they're creative, they have the capability to be creative. Because that's another thing we hear a lot. People go, oh, I'm not creative, I'm not artistic. And
well, we even hear that from art teachers.
Yes,
so we go to schools, and then they say, oh, all art teachers have got a little bit of artwork under the bed. So occasionally we have we create an exhibition for art teachers, so that they can actually get together and share their experiences, and they create little WhatsApp groups and exchange ideas about lesson plans, things like that. And it's just like, where can we make a difference in that,
Yeah, wherever we go, we look to see what connection would make a difference. And we went to we've got a workshop we're doing in a school in February, and the art teacher Mark was at school with. So he knows her very well. And we popped in for a meeting, and she had this part, like, I don't know, about 100 books that she'd got from, there was a sculpture park that had recently closed down, and somebody was taking all the books, beautiful big art books of sculpture, to the tip. And so we said, look, we pop into schools quite a lot, so let us take a lot of them, and then we can just give them away every time you go and do a workshop anywhere. And so that's what we're doing. But it's just, it's, you know, we're not responsible for the community that we're in, but we just, whenever we see a connection, we can, and then we can make a difference, or just connect someone to somebody else.
Yeah, it's kind of like with the Transition Town project. So transition towns are like people in local communities coming together to want to make a difference, maybe community garden, things like that. And it's just like, you come and share ideas about their issues they're dealing with today. And we make a bit of sculpture or do a mandala or plant a tree, whatever. And it's just like, it's like their connection for positive change. And obviously tea and cake is quite useful, quite nice as well.
Another term you just used, mandala. And interestingly, I believe there was one right at the moment you used that term on a beach. For people that don't know what that is, what if you could define it, and also say what your view is of its purpose or what its potential is?
I mean, it's certainly not a religious thing for us. You know, in parts of the world, the mandala has a religious connotation to it as a practice. But what it is, it's doing something slowly and gently and deliberately, one object at a time, placing it in a particular place that creates a beautiful pattern. And you can do that as a community. We do it in the banks of the River Llano in Texas, Paddy St. Louis and James Page, and other land artists. We worked for a week doing this beautiful mandala. Big, you know, you just keep adding and adding and adding all the time. You have materials to do so. What would it be for you?
Well, the second part of my question was, what, you know, in your view, what's the purpose of that? What's the opportunity of it? What's the potential of something that is so temporary?
Sharing, being playful, just being in the moment,
enjoying the materials, enjoying the different colors and textures, and going to maybe find a few leaves that you want to add. So it's again this slowing down where you're actually, and also the focus, you're actually looking in a way that you may not look when you walk down the street, or when you're just walking out into your garden. You're really focusing, and then you're looking at the different shapes and the different patterns, and that really accesses different parts of your brain. And I think it's any moment where you're just taking a moment and not having to make something happen or create something that's like worthy, but you're just in the moment. And that's one of the things that I think that connects a lot of different temporal land art, is that it is very in the moment, and it is very it's hard to define.
I mean, and whether it's documented or not doesn't matter, because you've had a shared experience as a group of people making.
But yeah, and
there's something kind of almost transcendent about a gesture like that. You know, the way a bouquet of flowers is similar.
It's a moment rather than. And I think that I think it's hard to place in this monetized like time we live in, whereas there's like a barter, there's an exchange, there's a, you know, there's a you're in a conversation with somebody, and all of that is in the background.
Yeah, there's been a tendency for art over the last sort of 200 years, like to commodify objects and paintings as a resource. You know, this is worth this because I say it's worth this. and not just because something's old doesn't mean it's necessarily worth anything. So with environmental art, with ephemeral art, you know, as how do we make a living out of doing things that are temporary?
But that actually makes a great segue into some interesting questions that are appearing in the chat.
Okay.
One of the things that I think is very present in the slideshow that we have going is that you really have a massive body of work, and that you have made a living as a land artist. How would one, well, there's a question, how would one get started doing land art? And I would augment that question with what was it like to turn that into the way that you make your living?
Okay. So I went to art school. I didn't academically, I didn't do very well. I was pretty good at sport and kayaking, and I was pretty good at drawing. So it seemed like art school was, or the Navy was the option. So I went to art school, and I love to draw. So I've been drawing all the time. And it's like, how do you make those drawings three-dimensional? Obviously, it's before the internet, before the virtual reality. So I made these structures. And so for me, the lines of Willow, the lines of Hazel, I know I'll answer your question exactly immediately, but it's just like these forms that I make, they're like just big drawings. So, and sometimes they're really big drawings. So how do you monetize? How do you do that for a living? So you do workshops, you do stuff to commission, you sell drawings. We do painting. There's a painting behind, sell paintings, anything really of a creative nature. The one on screen, that was at a school, that was in a gallery. But how does someone get started? Just go outside and play.
Yeah, I think that's how you get started. Is I think you have to take a leap.
Find your own way.
And you find your own way, connect with other artists, like find artists that inspire you. And that because one of the things for me, and I don't know whether it's exactly the same for Mark, but the artists that inspire me are the artists that I know. You know, I'm really blown away with the artists that we're lucky enough to have in our lives. They constantly inspire me. So it's find those people that inspire you and have them be your community, and then just go and start to draw and make and create. That you'll create something 2-3 times a week. You just go out and document it and start to connect to different artist communities, because there's lots of different communities, artist communities out there.
And don't make mistakes, because a master is someone who's made all the mistakes there are to make.
And we're still making them.
We will get through halfway through a sculpture, halfway through a project, and we'll be in what we call the pit of despair, where nothing's working and things are falling apart and falling over.
And we're falling out, and it's all horrible. And why do we do this? And I hate it, and this is awful. And then we know this now. We'll say to each other, we're in the pit of despair right now. And then we because we know that, then we kind of push through. And that's what I would say to anybody that wants to do, really create this as a living, is just keep pushing through, because you will fail. You will fall flat. It will not work out. And then you just go, well, that's happened yesterday. What next? And then, just keep on keeping on. Because if you don't keep showing up to do it,
of failures, right?
Well, exactly. We've got all these years.
You said something about the pit of despair. Clearly you have some real self-awareness in entering into these projects as a couple. One of the things that I know about you is that you've participated in landmark programs and trained yourself extensively in leadership. I'm just curious how that comes into play or makes a difference in you being able to have a long career in this field.
Can I go first?
Yeah.
So it's provided me the skills to go beyond what I thought I was capable of. So I go, oh, I'm stopped. Whereas before I would be stopped in an area. Now I think, well, actually, I just need to go to the person and not asking the right question. I need to go to the person who has the answers. I don't have to necessarily know the answers myself. In 2013, I was asked to take on running an arts festival for 100 artists annually every year. And I thought, well, that's impossible. I couldn't possibly do that. I don't really know how to use a computer. So I took on finding out the experts who could train me how to, say, design a brochure and get it printed and do all the social media and build a website. And then I ran that festival on my own for 5 years. I did everything for 5 years on my own. And then what I realized, I didn't create team. So I handed it over to a group of people. And now I'm just there as an advisory role. And the Arundel Gallery Trail, as part of Arundel Festival, is really successful. And it also provided me with, as a course supervisor, organising landmark forums, that during the pandemic, where everything seemed doomed, a team of us got together and we created an online art festival, a global online festival, with about 150 artists in 35 countries, all on Zoom over about 2 or 3 days, including 3 artists in Antarctica. And it was really great to see how everybody came together, and you could see all different disciplines, different types of land art, different types of environmental art, really inspiring.
But one of the things that I loved about that festival with the 3 artists that worked in Antarctica, they'd never met each other. So the first time they met was in this on this online festival, and the 3 of them, there was just this amazing conversation when they were talking about their work, which was land art, it's ephemeral work, or they were working with the wind or the ice. But it was just so well. Sometimes we step back and just think, wow, not that we're extraordinary, but how extraordinary that we have this
everybody else
life, and that what other people are creating. And I was going to say, the thing, one of the, it's to keep letting go of any kind of past of, oh, that didn't work, but to be informed by the past, but not dominated by, because we've had failures, we've had things that didn't work out. And often, this is for me personally, is often I have to deal with my uncertainty about what I'm making. Is it any good or anything like that? And I just have the ability to just notice that it's just a conversation rather than reality. And that's what keeps it happening. Yeah, I think it's really quite simple. It's just been such a gift, really.
Yeah.
Well, there's a practical question here. How your art requires resources and cooperation from various entities. How does one approach a community to create land art when the cost can be prohibitive? How can we get schools to contribute students who do not know how to create your form of art?
Good question. So I would say is, if they're talking specifically about how to have a school access land art, I would say, is that the question?
I'll read it again.
Yeah.
How does one approach a community to create land art when the cost can be prohibitive? And then the second part is, how can we get schools to contribute students who do not know how to create your form of art? So I take it as 2 questions.
Yes, I think firstly, I can't see how the cost would be prohibitive unless it's actually because you can even create on a school playground something with chalks, or
from leaves,
or from sand, or so it depends. Maybe if you're talking about an inner city school where they have limited access to like the green spaces, but then there's parks that people, you can always approach a park and say, we want to bring a group of school children in to create land art. And land artists love to work with young people. They just, we certainly do. And I know the other artists on here, they really, it's really important that they're working. So, get in contact with us, and we'll see what we can do to help connect you with someone.
Even if the person who's asking the question is not in the UK, we know somebody near you who can work with you.
That's great. That's great. So a couple other questions. You call yourself Two Circles Design and you make art. Can you say a bit more about the relationship between art and design?
Oh, that's
Okay, so two circles. There's a distinction I'm up for. There's like what happened, and what you made it mean. Two circles, and there's two of us.
so we just
So,
love that. That's why
yeah.
we called ourselves Two Circles. What would you say the second part of the question is about the design, the difference between art
It's
and
because
design?
it's because it's not like this important art. It's like design is, you're always in the process of discovery. You're always in like tweaking or create, like drawing, or you're just always developing.
Yeah,
You're always designing. You know, we're always in that inquiry.
yeah,
And because we not just sculpture but garden design, and we did garden design and and construction for many years. Got an RHS gold medal in 2021. Thank you very much. And we've done straw bale buildings and greenwood architecture and pay all kinds of stuff. So we thought, as an overall term of people who just love to make stuff, we would call ourselves a design company.
Hmm.
And I was going to say, I was, you know, brushing my teeth, and I was looking up. We've got this light socket, and on the light socket, it's got this little image of a man with half his beard shaved, and I just got that. Actually, there's art literally everywhere. There's either something's been designed, or someone's drawn it, or someone's thought about it, and nothing happens by accident. It's there's someone's designed the fact that the light was that shape, or you know, or the way the plug sockets go. Someone's thought about it, and I think that was part of the reason why we call ourselves a design company, because we do,
and we get to say how it goes.
Yeah.
So we get to create the things we do because we say that's how we're going to do it.
Yeah. So we love doing that. That's something that's really.
So the piece that's on screen at the moment, that was at a school created by about 15 children over 3 days.
Yeah.
That colourful one.
Yeah.
Well, I want to ask a couple more questions to conclude a recorded interview here. One is there's clearly just the beauty of what you've created, and what we've been showing in the slides is very compelling.
Thank you.
Did you ever imagine when you entered into this that you'd have created this much work?
I'm saying
you're saying that.
I love that.
having started art school in 1992, getting and thinking, okay, I really love environmental art. One day I'd like to be an environmental artist. Here we are in 2024, and I'm like, okay, this is where I thought I would be 20 years ago.
Is it?
But yeah, so I'm not trying to do anything
well,
bad.
it's lovely that you had two different answers to that question. So Rebecca, how about you?
I'm just amazed. You know, when we were invited to Italy to create art, like back in 2016, it was like the most extraordinary. I just never take it for granted. I just feel so privileged to have this kind of life. And you know, yes, we've worked hard, and yes, we've taken risks, and yes, it's been not easy, but it's just been extraordinary, and just feel so.
It was
lucky.
Great that we went from gardening and garden design to say, this is what we're going to do. We were on the wisdom course. We said, okay, we're going to be international artists 2015. This is what we're going to do. And you know, it's been a wonderful ride. We get to travel the world, making sculptures, interacting with some really lovely people, sharing experiences, and playing on the sand, in the woodlands, forests, up mountains, with ice. It's been an extraordinary few years.
Thank you,
All right,
Shane.
this is our final question for you.
Mm.
Many artists and many mediums going back thousands of years, we can still see their work. Most of your work, the world will never see generations from now. Yet you obviously create with a depth of passion that rivals anybody who's an artist. What's your message to the world in your art? What's your legacy?
Oh, that's a question.
It's a bit like you can make a difference in a conversation with somebody that changes their life in a different way. They can pass that on
Yeah,
to their children, their grandchildren. That is a legacy
yeah,
just by being. Um,
yeah. I would say that it's the less I can leave behind, the better. And if the legacy is that somebody has got something for themselves that allows something to happen, I don't want to say, oh, they go off and be an artist, but that actually gives them something really precious, and that's all that's important. Whether we're known or not is just irrelevant. And I think the majority of art, even the most extraordinary art, has disappeared, and only very tiny fractions remained, like music, writing, all of that. So it's whatever the legacy is that we've had a community and create community, like wherever we go, and that's I don't know about you, Mark, but that's it for me. For sure.
Wonderful.
yeah,
Well, I really, really thank you for taking the time with us today. And really, your work is so inspiring. It's something that I know I'm inspired. I know people that have participated in this interview with us are deeply inspired. And just thank you for the legacy of your work.